Welcome to another episode of Culinary School Stories, the bi-weekly podcast that is dedicated to sharing the stories of people around the globe whose lives have been influenced, impacted, touched, and or enriched, for good or for bad, from their culinary school experience. Hi, my name is Colin Roach, and I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. You are an important part of this show, where we ask the question, what's your culinary school story? So now, without any further delay, let's meet today's guest. So my guest today is Luis Young. Luis, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show today, and I want to start right out by saying welcome and thank you for joining us and sharing your culinary school story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Let's start right out with our first question. You went to Johnson & Wales University in the North Miami campus. Why did you want to go to culinary school in the first place? And, did you look at other culinary schools first? And kind of tell us how that all materialized.
Well, I did. I started culinary school in Panama, but it was not really what I wanted or where I wanted to be. So at that point, I started doing my research. I looked into Le Cordon Bleu, I looked into CIA, and then Johnson & Wales. And I decided to go to the campus in Miami just because it was close to Panama. It's like 2.5 hours from Panama.
Great. And let's go back to that first day when you got on campus. What was going through your mind? Obviously you're probably apprehensive, maybe nervous, excited. What were you thinking? What do you wish you knew before you got there or after the fact? Or, tell us kind of like that first day. What was happening?
Well, I was super excited. It was like a dream come true. But at the same time, I'm not going to lie, I was super nervous. In Panama, you learn English, but you don't use it every day. And I feel like the day that I arrived on campus, it was you're here, go, figure things. So it was a little uncomfortable at the beginning, but I see the value in that. And everybody was so helpful that I think I got a little list of things that I needed to check or do. And they just point me in the right direction. After that day, it was easy. And
you got your uniforms and got fitted and books and knife kits?
Everything. That was part of the checklist. It's go here to academic services, go to financial services, then, go pick up your uniform, get your knife kit, which, it's probably the first day is the most exciting thing when you get your uniform and your knife kit.
So they had a roadmap for you and you just hit different stations and got it all set up.
Yep.
Great. What advice would you give to someone wanting to pursue culinary school? They wanted to go to culinary school and they asked you about it. What was it like? Or what should I know? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, do your research. I think that there's so many options right now. I guess it depends on what's your goal, right? If you want to go more into the restaurant management aspect, target your school towards that. If you want to be more in the culinary, more like the chef, you want to be in the kitchen, then you take that into consideration as well. That's the first thing, do your research. And then once you're in school, take advantage of every single extracurricular activities.
Great, yeah.
For me, competition was the thing. When I started, it was just doing the classes, and then I volunteered to pretty much every single help out for the open house or this other event. But doing competition, I think, was probably one of the most valuable experiences that I got from going to culinary school. What
are some of the competitions you did participate in while you were at school?
I did DECA for 3 years.
Okay.
I did the San Pellegrino, the Almost Famous, and then the ICC, which was the Johnson & Wales, the several campuses.
How did you do in those competitions?
DECA, that was team competition, and we won first place for the 3 years that we competed.
Oh, great.
San Pellegrino, I did very well. I won that one as well. And then ICC, that one we didn't do so well. We still placed. I think we got bronze medal, but we didn't win that one. We didn't get first place.
Now, that San Pellegrino one was an individual contest. And I think, if I remember correctly, it starts local and regional and states. Maybe you could share with the listeners a little bit more about that competition, what you took away from it.
Well, it was an interesting competition because I remember there were supposed to be 2 contestants from Johnson & Wales to go to the regional. And then once you win the regional, you go into the final. And a week before the regional, I got selected to go to the competition, and I was extremely nervous. But I think that like helped me work harder than anybody else, you know. And what I gained from all of that, it's like making you uncomfortable, getting out of your comfort zone. It's probably one of the best things that you can do for yourself. You know, most of the time we don't learn anything when we're comfortable, when, you know, like everything's the status quo, everything's nice and everything's the way it has been for a long time. You probably don't grow as much. When you force yourself to be in a situation where you're probably uncomfortable, it's probably challenging, that's when you really grow.
And so you were growing during that competition because you were...
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And how far did you go? Did you win the whole thing?
Yes, I did. We went to the regional. I think it was in West Palm Beach. I won the regional. Then I think we had like a month to prepare for the final. And then whoever won like the individual regions, you were supposed to meet in Napa at the CIA in Greystone for the final. And then the competition was basically 2 days. The first day was a mystery basket portion of the competition. And then the next day you basically had to do the signature dish that you used during the regional, and then make 200 portions, like tasting portions, in about like 4 hours.
And you were competing against winners from other regions?
Yeah, from different regions. I don't remember all the regions, but it was like 10 or 12 regions. And those included like a contestant from Italy, one from Canada, and I think one from Mexico as well.
Wow. So really international.
Yep.
Well, that was great. And what you won it all. What did you get? What did they give you? Did they give you a cash prize or a trophy, or what was the result?
All the above. I think that there were several like categories. One was the mystery basket portion of it, then the signature dish portion of it, and then the overall like the title of San Pellegrino Almost Famous Chef. I won the signature dish portion of it, and then the overall competition, the Almost Famous Chef. And part of winning that was, there were several things. There were cash prize. I think I got like $13,000 to $14,000.
Wowza.
They also gave you like a set of all class, and I got the opportunity to participate in the South Beach Food and Wine. I got the opportunity to go to the James Beards and Cooks over there.
Ah, great.
So it was a great experience.
So not only what you got at culinary school as part of your curriculum and your classes, academic, but you were also participating in a lot of extracurricular activities, and it
absolutely
appears it opened up some great doors for you and great experiences.
Absolutely. And it also allows you to like have that like one-on-one time with your chefs instructors. Sometimes you're in class and there's 18, 20 people in the class, and you don't really have the time to like ask the questions that you really want to ask. Because I mean, you're so busy during class that when you're actually just practicing for competition, is usually, you know, one-on-one. You have the time to actually like ask the things that you want to know, whether it's like, you know, something technical or it's like advice, you know, like where should I go with my career? What's the best path to follow?
So at what age did you know or think you wanted to become a chef or get into this culinary field?
I think it was 12. I was 12. Before that, I wanted to be a doctor because since I was 3 years old, I was diagnosed with a kidney disease. And then at one point, I think around 12, 13, my like immune system was kind of like depressed. So I was supposed to be at home during the summer. Uh-huh. And then all I did was watch cooking shows. That's I mean, I really love to eat. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna learn how to cook for myself, because part of the diet that I was in, it was, you know, no liquids, a lot of restrictions, no salt. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna watch all these cooking shows and I'm gonna learn so that I can cook for myself. And that's how it started. And then I took the opportunities to, like, when it was summertime from high school, I would volunteer to go work in a restaurant in Panama and work for the 3 months and learn. And suddenly something that started just like, you know, like as a hobby, or I wanted to just learn how to cook for myself. I saw it as an opportunity to help others as well.
Oh, that's great.
I realized that you don't need to be a doctor to help others. You know, there are other ways to help.
Yeah, food is medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were there times in which you wished to choose a different career, or did you, question going into this field, or were you like, yes, this is it. This is what I'm going to do?
I think that briefly, there were points in my life where I was like, what am I doing? And it's, again, those moments where you go through difficult times. I think that the first time that I experienced working in a 3 Michelin star restaurant, and you're not used to that. I was working 16 to 18 hours a day, sleeping on a basement in the restaurant, and getting the amount of pressure that you get from the chefs at those restaurants. It was hard. I think it was 18 years old, and I've never left Panama, and suddenly I'm in Spain working in this place, and it was hard. And I was like, what am I doing? I was reconsidering everything. But the thing is, like, you go through that one day and you feel like maybe this is not for me, but you wake up the next day full of energy and passion and the commitment to do it again. And then you get beat down again one day, but the next day you wake up and you say, you know what? Let's keep pushing. Let's keep trying. That was one point. And then another point was when I was in Chicago. And I went through a similar experience working in a Michelin restaurant. I would wake up at 5, take a bus, then get to the restaurant by 5:36. And then I wouldn't leave until 8:39. So I never really saw sunlight for the amount of time that I was there. So it was hard. And at that point, I was like, maybe this is not for me. So I moved into working in front of the house, which it was valuable. I always recommend that to everybody, all my cooks right now. Like, if you have the experience or the opportunity, like, just do it once, work in front of the house. But when I was working in front of the house, I realized that it was not as engaging as I wanted it to be. I missed the rush of the kitchen. After that point, it's like I never look back, even though, there are days that are hard or difficult or challenging. I never think like, you know what, I should be doing something else. I'm definitely where I want to be.
So it was just the certain parts of the industry or certain categories that may have been more challenging?
Yeah, I feel like one, it's the shock of like working X amount of hours at the beginning, right? We have this idea sometimes that 8-hour job, like it's not like that. It's not like that. I think that like first shock, then you get used to it and you're like, okay, but then something else, maybe like when you realize that you're working when everybody else is off, that probably for the past 10 years, I haven't celebrated my birthday. I've been always working, or that for the past 10 years, I've been working on Christmas Day. Sometimes you think about it like, what am I doing? Like life is about balance. It's about like, enjoying your job but at the same time, spending time with your family and the people that you love. But then I realized that, this is what I do. This is what I love. This is a big part of who I am. And it doesn't mean that I don't get the chance to spend time with family. It's just maybe not the same day, but the next day, like I can make it work.
Sure. Did you find you went to the front of the house? Did you find it because it was easier, less demanding, or was it easier because of hours and less hours or less stress, or how was that compared front and back of the house?
I think that the hours were definitely better. Pay was better too.
Oh, because you're working for tips.
Exactly. Especially if you're a cook compared to like somebody that works around the house, the pay was better. I wouldn't say that it was easier. It was different. Especially somebody like me, like I'm by nature like an introvert. So it was challenging for me to like go to a table of 12 and like
sure.
introduce myself and talk to them. That's one part. And then it's like in the kitchen, we always were behind doors, right? So we don't really interact that much with the guests. Sometimes it's challenging when you have guests that are upset or that they don't like something. As a chef, most of the time we don't face that. It's the server who has to like take care of that.
They have to be the liaison between the front and the back, the customer in the back of the house, and solve those problems.
That's correct.
Now, you were telling us about those restaurants. Explain a little bit more, especially for the listeners, where you work. Some of those places are very well known, and how you got those positions and what it was like. You already gave us a little taste that it's hard. You're sleeping in the basement, you're working all those hours. But how is it working with these famous chefs?
For me, it started, I think it was 18, and I went to Spain to this restaurant called Martín Berasategui, 3 Michelin star. And it was, as I said, like very challenging experience, but probably because it was just the first experience that I had. After that, I had the opportunity to work at Alinea, and it got a little bit easier just because I was used to it by then. It's just like getting used to working at high standards. Like there's no room for like being mediocre or like I'm gonna let it fly this time and tomorrow will be better. No, like it's gotta be 100% all the time. That was a great experience. I learned so much from that. It was one of the best like learning experiences because I was at a point, I think it was 2008 when I was at Alinea, and where like all of this was new. All of this like progressive cuisine was starting in the US. So it was definitely interesting. Then after that, I started school. I started Johnson & Wales. Once I finished school, I got the opportunity to work in Chicago for a couple of years. I did front of the house while I was there. I worked at Spiaggia for a few months. And then I went back to Miami. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to get my master's degree. So I traveled back to Spain. I went to the Basque Culinary Center, and I got my master's there. And part of the curriculum there, your last few months, you had to go to a restaurant and work. So I got the opportunity to work at El Celler de Can Roca. I think it was like #1 restaurant that year. And again, that was like a life-changing experience because it was not only about like food and service and the quality of the ingredients. At that place, I learned about like how important it is to like build a culture in a kitchen. How important it is to have a philosophy that like your team, like it's fully behind it. How to keep them like motivated. There's some other places like you're just working, and that's why there's at least that's how I feel. I feel like there's such a high turnover. You work for 6 months to a year, you get burned out, and you move on. And I feel like at Can Roca, it was different. Even though it was hard, the hours were the same, 16 hours a day. But there was like more a humane side to it. They make sure that we had breakfast every day. They made sure that we had lunch every day. They made sure that we had dinner every day. They made sure that we had a little break in the middle of service. They made sure that, days that we were not busy, they would take the whole team. And, today we're going to talk about like hydrocolloids, and we're going to teach you about that. Or we're going to teach you about like, foraging or these microgreens. So it was about like the philosophy and creating that culture in the kitchen. So that was definitely one of the best experience, and I always recommend if you have the opportunity to like travel, go to a place like that. And then after that, something that I thought that it would never happen was the French laundry. Because since I was in Johnson & Wales, I was always applying to do a stage. And at one point, I think I got accepted to do a stage. And then for that summer, I went to Germany to do a study abroad. And then on the way back, I got an email saying that the stage program had been canceled.
Oh.
So I was like, well, I think that, the opportunity to be at the French laundry, it's gone. And then a few years later, I applied and I got to work there. And that was another great experience. It was almost like a school. It's like an institution, like you get there. It's not about like, forget about everything not because there's no value, but because we want to teach you how to fine tune those things that you've learned before. And again, it was about like the culture. There is, in a place like the French laundry, it's like you want to be better because you know that you're surrounded by like the best of the best. So there's a sense of like a friendly competition, or more than a competition. I would say that it's like collaboration.
Huh. And they're from all over. The cooks, they're all from different schools and different, they're all dying to get in there, right? It must be a waiting list. And
yeah, when I was there were people from like Sweden. There were people from Mexico, from Venezuela, from all over the US. And again, there was pretty much like a long list of people waiting to get in there.
And you say competition, is it like, oh, where'd you go to school? What'd you learn? Did you learn it this way? And, kind of rivalry a little bit?
A little bit. I mean, I remember, and again, this is funny because my first day, they asked me to do something, and I think it was a simple task, like maybe juicing like carrots, and one of the cooks, it's like he gets close to me and he's like, where did you go to school? I was like, oh, Johnson and Wales. And he's like, oh, no wonder. And I'm like, what is that even supposed to mean, But again, I mean, after that, we were great friends. But there's, a little bit of like friendly competition, I would say, because most of the cooks that were there were from the CIA. But you had a couple of students from Johnson and Wales. Actually, one of the sous chefs was from Johnson and Wales.
And how was it working with Thomas Keller? Did you interact with him much in the kitchen, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see like how important for Thomas Keller it is to like acknowledge and say hi to all his cooks. You would think that at that level, like you never see him. He was every single weekend. He was there. The minute he got into the kitchen, he made sure that he said hi to every single person in the kitchen.
Wow.
Not only the cooks, but like every single steward, every single person in the front of the house. And when he left for the day, it was the same. He made sure that he said goodbye to everyone. And you could see that culture throughout the whole like team. It's something that it's kind of like contagious. So every time, it doesn't matter if you're a commis or if you're the chef de cuisine at the French Laundry. Once you get there, you say hi to everybody.
Where did you stay out there? Do they have living arrangements for the employees, or you have to on your own?
Well, I think that when they talk to you about the opportunity of like starting at the French Laundry, they send you a list of places that are renting like rooms or stuff like that. And I think that at that point they had like a couple of rooms available that were close by. So definitely they help you.
You weren't in the basement like that other restaurant.
No. Luckily at that point, like I had a friend that was in Napa. So I just stayed there.
If someone wanted to go to one of these, Michelin star top restaurants, what advice would you give them? How would you guide them? Or what best should they do if they wanted to follow in that route?
Be persistent. It's been different in every single restaurant for me. Like Alinea, which is a funny story because my dad told me or he asked me what do you want to do? Like, what's your goal? And I was like, well, I want to work at the French Laundry or I want to work at Alinea. Those are like the best restaurants in the US. And he's like, well, you have to be a little realistic, those are the best places. What do you think they're going to, and that upset me so much because he's like, what are you talking about? Like, why not? So that day, I sent an email to Alinea, I'm sure that if this is something that I want, I can make it happen. So I sent an email and then the next day they said, you know what, when can you start? So in that case, it was easy. It was just one email and boom, the next day I got it. But in the case of the French Laundry, it took me years. I'm talking about 5 years of every single year I would send emails every 3 months. I would call. So definitely be persistent. One thing also that it works is if you're in a great city that has a lot of good restaurants, just show up to the restaurant, knock on the door and say, hey, I'm eager to learn. I'll do anything. I'll wash dishes. That's going to get you in. Once you're in, you're pretty much set, once you're there, just even if you're washing or dishes or something like that, start looking around, start learning by, just by watching, observing.
And you're there, you're right in front of them. So if they need somebody or they see that you're working hard, it's easy to pick from someone that's right here in front of them than to try to recruit somebody.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Now, when these places have such a waiting list to get in, they know everybody wants to work there. Obviously, it opens up the door to take advantage of these commis, these culinarians that are coming in there. Do they? I guess it's different other properties, but can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, I guess the pay would be low. Do they just, abuse you? Do they keep you there all kinds of hours? Or are they just no, they're really trying to treat you like an employee and that hopefully you're going to stay for a long time? Or is it just get what you can and get it on your resume and get out?
I think that nowadays it's different. I don't think it's just hard for restaurants to abuse somebody, in the sense of oh, you want to work X amount of hours. And I think it's getting harder to do that. And at the same time, I feel like it depends on how you look at it. If you look at it from the perspective that, I'm working 18 hours, I'm not getting paid, this is abuse, that victim mentality, yes. I understand, but at the same time, it's like, see what you can learn from that. Like, what are you gaining from that? If you think that you're working 18 hours, don't see it as, like, I'm getting abused. See it as like, you know what? They're teaching me, or I'm learning how to like work hard. Where else am I going to get the opportunity to firsthand see, black truffles, work with foie, see caviar, taste all these great ingredients. So if you look at it from that perspective, I think that it makes it easier, right? That being said, like, it's definitely hard. There's always like a little period, especially probably your first month, that everybody's like, they want to see what you're made of. So they're going to push you. Definitely, they're going to push you. But once that's passed, it's like you're part of the team, and they're going to teach you as much as they possibly can. I think that at the end of the day, like, it all depends on your perspective and what you want to do. If you go there and you're like, feel entitled, that, after 2 weeks, I'm like, I'm not learning anything. I've been, scrubbing potatoes for 2 weeks and I'm going to leave. Like, okay, then that's what you learn. But if you push through and you see, like, you know what, I'm peeling potatoes, but I'm peeling potatoes at the best restaurant, that I can be in. And at the same time, you're looking and asking questions, they're going to notice that. And once they notice that, it won't be long until they ask you to, like, move into the next station.
Is there a lot of turnover? Is there openings coming up all the time that you could move into?
Yes, I feel like a lot of people that work in this kind of restaurant, just because of the level of like intensity that you're in, you do it for a year and then you move on.
Awesome. What's one common myth about the profession, or about culinary school, or about the kitchen that you want to debunk, that it's not true, but people always ask you, this is what people think, and you're like, no, this is not true, and this is why?
I think a couple of things. One, that going to culinary school is going to make you a celebrity chef. That's just, it's not so simple. That's one. And then the other one, it's like that we eat great food all the time. Or that we cook a lot of, like, fancy meals at home. That's definitely not the case.
Sometimes we just want someone to cook for us, right? That's all we want.
Absolutely. It's like you get out of work and all you want is, like a greasy burger and fries. It's like, what? Like, I thought that you would, be eating like, steaks and wine like all the time. Like, no, that's not how it works.
We're the employees. We're not the guests.
Yeah.
Let's go back to culinary school and tell about when you were there. What was your best class and why? And what was like your worst class, or it could have been better, or that, wasn't really what you wanted, or you weren't interested? Maybe share that perspective with the listeners.
That's a hard question for me, because I really enjoy my time at the school. So I don't think I have like a class that I didn't really like, especially like if we're talking about only culinary. I think that some of the academics were, I thought that, maybe this is a little boring. Favorite class, I think that the front of the house classes, the dining room classes, just because it was so new to me. When I started Johnson & Wales, I already had a little bit of experience in the kitchen. So I knew a couple of things, but front of the house, I had no idea. I had no idea about wine. I had no idea about like how to talk to guests, all the things that you need to consider. So it was very interesting because like every single class, it's like, okay, you're like a sponge ready to like absorb all this knowledge. And then other classes that were fun, stock sauces and soups was fun. My first class, it was traditional European cuisine. That one was a fun class as well. And then classical French cuisine.
Great. Who are the 3 people who have been the most influence to you? It could be career, personal, alive, they could have passed on, but 3 people most influential to you.
I think that professional, it will have to be like Thomas Keller. I think that, like he's influenced, so many great chefs. And I think that everybody that's starting in this career, it's like, that's like the Mecca. The French Laundry is the Mecca, right? The fact that I got the opportunity to like live that and experience that, and see like the philosophy and the culture that he creates, like that changed me, changed how I talk to my cooks, the way I see ingredients, the way I create dishes. That's definitely one. I think that the experience at Can Roca was another one. Seeing like the 3 brothers and how they they have this culture that it's like it's a restaurant and that performs at a high level, but at the same time, it's like it feels like a family. So that definitely changed or made it possible, because at that point I was like, it's separate things. You have work and you have family, and they made it seem like, you know what, like you can work and at the same time you can have family life. And then a third person would be probably my family in the sense of like my grandfather and my mom. They've even though it's not culinary related, like I've seen them like always that sense of like, there's no substitute for hard work. That keep pushing. The idea of like you don't learn necessarily in the moments where you're like comfortable. It is okay, and it's actually encouraged to like get out of the comfort zone every once in a while. And that's going to allow you to grow.
What profession was your grandfather and your father in?
My grandfather, he's an engineer. My father, he's an entrepreneur. He owns a couple of businesses in Panama. And my mom is an architect. And again, I've completely different backgrounds, but the message was pretty much the same.
And when you first went into culinary and you told them, were they supportive behind it, or were they like, "What? What are you doing?"
Well, they were like, "Are you sure?" Because when I was in Panama, I was showing like a couple of attitudes towards politics. I kind of like politics, and I got involved with everything that was around politics when I was in high school. So they were like, "Are you sure? Like this is really what you want to do?" And I think that's why my dad told me when he asked me, like, like, what is it that you want to do? Where do you want to work? And trying to tell me like, like these are the best restaurants, like be a little bit more realistic. But at the end of the day, like they always supported me, even though at one point, maybe they thought like, maybe there's, like keep other options, explore other options. But they always supported me. And then once they saw that I was serious about it, it was fine. It was like, you know what, do what you have to do. We're going to support you. We're going to help you. And to this day, like I think I had them here at the restaurant at least once or twice a year.
Now that must be special when they come as your guest and you get to cook for them or serve them, and they get to see you in your element. That must make them really proud.
Absolutely, it's one of the best experience that as a chef that you can have.
What's next for you? What's your plan? What are you going to end up in Panama? Open your own place? Are you going to keep continuing on this path? What's your next goal? What's your next accomplishment?
At this point, I don't think I would go back to Panama. I feel like I've lived in the U.S. for the past 10 years. I'm used to it by now. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I want to keep working in the kitchen for a few more years. I don't know that I want to be putting turkeys in the oven when I'm 60. But I'm going to be in the kitchen for the next few years. Maybe doing something, owning my own restaurant, or maybe working in a restaurant at the hotel or a hotel like I'm doing right now.
And you're in Colorado right now?
Yes, I'm in Colorado Springs right now.
Maybe teaching could be an option.
I've always thought about that. And it was funny because I was in Panama for like 2 years. And then when I came back to the States 3 years ago, I was like, either I go and keep working or I go into teaching. And then I decided ultimately to keep working because I said, you know what, if gaining more experience in the kitchen, it's going to allow me in the future to teach with a different perspective, give them a little bit more weight behind what the words that I'm, telling them and actually like, talking from, this actually happened to me as opposed to like, I've heard this or, reading it from a book. But yeah, that's something that I always think about, like teaching. I would really like to do that.
Oh, great. And you mentioned the American Culinary Federation, ACF. You were in some of their competitions and stuff. And what do you think about certification, professional organizations, apprenticeship for that matter?
I think there's value to that. Now I see it. I think that at one point I was like, just working in a restaurant, that's all just keep working. But it offers you an opportunity, one, to connect with your peers, create a network, which is very important. And at the same time, it's like, once you've reached a certain level, it's like, okay, what do I do next? And I think that an organization like ACF and doing certifications allows you to have a goal and keep pushing. right now I'm working on getting my CEC. At the beginning of the year, I passed the reading portion of it, and I'm planning on scheduling my practical. And that's like, now this is my next goal, and it keeps you moving forward.
Yeah, keep learning.
Mm-hmm.
So as we come to the end of our chat today, and before we wrap up, is there any last-minute advice or guidance you want to leave with the listeners? Something you want to share?
Well, as far as advice, I would say focus on learning from the best. You can do it two ways, right? Like you can be, as I said in an example, you can be peeling potatoes at a regular average Joe restaurant, or you can be peeling potatoes at the best restaurant in the country or in the state. And at the end of the day, you're probably going to learn more from working at the best restaurant. So focus on that. Don't focus so much. And I get it. Sometimes it's hard because we have things to pay. We have responsibilities. In your formative years, like don't focus so much about making money. Focus about how much can you learn, because that's going to potentially make you more money in the end. Take every opportunity as a learning experience, as a learning, like in the case of working in a restaurant and you feel oh my God, I'm getting abused because I'm working 18 hours. Change your perspective. Think that, this is not going to last forever. I'm not going to be doing this forever. What can I gain from this? So once you switch your perspective, things are going to be easier for you. And then be patient. It takes a lot of passion. It takes a lot of commitment. There's no substitute for hard work. Work hard. If you really want it, keep working at it, and eventually it's going to happen.
Bringing this back to culinary school, now that you know what you know and you have perspective and you've been removed from it from a while, and all that you went through and the money and the time, was it worth it? Would you do it again?
Absolutely, in a heartbeat. Absolutely. I don't think that. I don't want to say that it's a requirement to go to culinary school, but I think that culinary school give you the tools that you need to make your life in the kitchen or your culinary journey a little bit easier. And that's, that gaining that little advantage, it means a lot.
And you went on and got a bachelor's and then a master's. Do you think associates enough these days? Do you think, encourage more education?
I feel like in the culinary world, it's very unusual to see something, past associates or bachelors. I'm not, in my case, I value education. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted to get my master's. I think that if you don't want to get your master's, that's okay, but find something to look forward to. Okay, maybe it's not the education segment, but there learn how to do sous vide, maybe learn how to go into another aspect, which would be leadership, maybe psychology, because all of these things, you're going to need them in the kitchen.
Yeah, good advice. Yeah, they could learn pastry, or they could learn, ice carving, something to keep them growing and excited and, in this industry.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Well, that is just about all the time we have for this episode, and I want to first thank Luis for coming on the show today and sharing your culinary school story with all of us. We really appreciate your time, your insight, and your honesty.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been definitely a pleasure to be here.
Okay, great. Thanks, and I really enjoyed our chat, and bye-bye now.
Bye. Take care.
And a big thanks and appreciation also goes out to all of you, the listeners. We hope you enjoy the show and this episode. You all are a big part of this show, so please let us know what you think. Your comments are always welcome, and they help us in making the best show possible. You can email them to culinaryschoolstories@gmail.com. That's culinaryschoolstories@gmail.com. Or even leave us a voicemail at area code 207-835-1275. That's area code 207-835-1275. And if you like the show, we have a big ask of all of you, and that is to share the podcast with everyone you know and to give us a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Okay, until our next Culinary School Story, take care and be well. Bye-bye. Culinary School Stories is a proud member of the Food Media Network.